Today we are in Istanbul. I'm here with Alexia Genta. She was kind enough to join us in Istanbul representing the Gérald Genta brand. We are the partners now, official partners of the brand in the Turkish market as Salon Kantièm. But thanks a lot, Alexia, for joining us in this beautiful afternoon.
Thanks
we are
for
more than
having me.
humbled to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, and this is so beautiful.
I'm glad that you're enjoying, and thanks to the entire, maybe a fair amount of the Fabrique Vuitton team as well for making the effort, taking the time and coming to Istanbul. I'd like to discuss a little bit of, obviously, Gérald Genta is an enormous, huge name when it comes to watches. Anybody who is a watch lover, a collector, they're more than familiar with the man himself. But first and foremost, it's your dad. So like it had a different role to you or your mother than he had to any other one of us. What was it like growing up in a house with your dad, Gérald Genta?
So, growing up, I wasn't quite so aware of how successful Dad was as a watch designer, but I knew he was different compared to my friends' fathers.
Okay.
He was always the father asking me to not do my homework, go outside, look at nature. He really believed in being creative and just not being so academic and doing things the way people expect you to. He never taught me how to design a watch, unfortunately. I mean, he tried, and it lasted 10 minutes, and then we both ended up slamming doors on both sides. I mean, it was a disaster. But what he did always try to teach me was how to observe. So he would take me and to look at a rose, or even once it was a fly that landed on the table, and it was looking at the geometry and the colors and all of this. So he spent a long time teaching me that kind of stuff.
That's really sweet. And do you have like a specific memory, or at least do you remember when was the first time that you actually realized that your father designs, I mean, he's an artist first and foremost, but he designs watches, these beautiful tiny little things, for a living. Do you have an exact memory, like, or was it you just growing up in a household full of watches, watch designs, sketches all over the place? Do you remember anything like that?
Yes, I always knew he was designing watches, simply because every day, by the time I would leave to go to school, my dad was already wearing a suit. Even though he was designing from home, he already had his suit and his tie, and he would be designing watches immediately. And then after lunchtime, he would be painting on canvas. And by the time I come home, he would show me perhaps 4 different models of watches. He produced so many in one day,
And he was asking for your ideas, opinions?
Never ideas. He asked me what I thought, but maybe
fine.
only one time did I dare say that I prefer the
like
one
it.
from yesterday, and I learned my lesson.
I can imagine, but it must have been super fun to grow up in such a
I mean, I didn't
house
realize.
with such a man,
For me, it was just normal.
Exactly.
I just had an
day-to-day life.
artistic father. Yeah.
Incredible. And you just mentioned, before we dive into watches, you just mentioned that he was also still painting in the afternoons. And quite recently, you just held the first exhibition of your father's paintings from back in the days, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, since he sadly passed away, we really wanted to just make sure that his dream of being known as a painter in his own right would come true. And this is our first step. We did this beautiful exhibition. And I really think that the watch community should know that Dad was an artist, because we think of Gérald Genta, we know about the famous models, we know about this incredible brand that was his. But the reason why he was such a visionary, the reason why he did different shaped watches when everything was square or round, or why he brought the first bronze watch, or he put Mickey Mouse on a dial, that's because he approached watches as a painter and not as a watch designer or a watchmaker.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. And it was a friend who told me this. He said designing unique, different, yet still likable watch is almost extremely impossible, because you ask a 7-year-old to draw a watch on a blank paper, or you ask a 8-year-old to design a watch, they would be more or less ending up designing the same thing, a round case, 2 hands, and that's all. and like indexes and everything, but that's all you're gonna get. So we're talking about these tiny pieces anywhere from 3 to 4 centimeters, that's all. You're trying to come up with an identity that has never been done before, or even like you have to have your personal touch. And if you have too many constraints, which is, I think watch industry even nowadays, it's a little bit too packed with the same ideas, same designs, going over and over same things. It is getting more and more difficult, in my opinion, to see a design that is quite unique. And your father, it was more than 50 years ago, he designed not only one, at least a dozen of the most iconic watch designs. I mean, let's say, honestly, I think I dare to say it, maybe you're not allowed, but like the most famous watch design, the two most famous watch designs were designed by your father.
Yes, of
the
course.
Royal Oak and the Nautilus, by far.
And then you have
And he changed the whole industry, by the way.
Yes, you
with
have.
that design.
There's so many of them, but the reason why he did it, and you use the right word, use the right constraints.
Exactly.
And Dad, because he was a frustrated artist, because whenever he had to design a watch, he had the constraints of the small object that had to function. And he was always trying to find the freedom he so loved in painting in those small objects. He was always pushing boundaries to get the freedom, basically.
But it must have been extremely difficult because you not only designed Royal Oak, you designed Paul Reuter, you designed Constellation from Omega, you designed Nautilus, right? You designed Ingenieur, even the Rolex King Midas.
The King Midas, yes.
The Pasha from Cartier. I mean, all these watches are still extremely highly sought after.
It was not hard for him. It was instinct.
You don't think so? Okay.
It wasn't hard. You know, when Dad designed, it was pure emotion. It was pure instinct. It's true that the Royal Oak was designed in one night, but all of his designs were designed in just a few hours.
So that whole story is true?
It's absolutely true because I watched him design, and he wouldn't research.
Okay.
He wouldn't use a pencil except for just drawing the two perpendicular lines.
Okay.
He would just grab a compass, do a circle, and then he would grab a paintbrush, and he would paint the watch, and then he'd put it to the side and move on to the next model, and he would never look back. So he was just a creative machine, and whenever I would dare to ask him where's your inspiration come from, and rarely there's an answer, like the oursin, the sea urchin in Corsica, the Royal Oak, you have but most of the time when I asked him what's your inspiration, he'd look at me like it's the stupidest question ever. It just came to him,
Yeah, exactly. Probably it was in his nature somehow.
Yeah.
And that was probably what we call the constraints. Being away from them was his strength.
Yeah.
And may I ask you a personal question? Today you see still even some fairly big watch brands somehow capitalizing your father's most famous designs, i.e. Royal Oak and Nautilus. Still sports, integrated bracelet watches, still almost every single brand, whether if they're successful or they're looking for success, they still come up with that as if it's something that has never been done before. Is it something flattering for you, or is it sometimes bothering you because you're like, that did this better than you guys like more than 50 years ago?
Look, firstly, I'm so glad that Dad's designs still today are considered so iconic. Actually, now we can call them icons, right? Because they've passed the test of time.
Sure.
So nowadays we say icons for everything, but these are genuine icons I love. Then, do designs need to evolve? Of course, they have to with time. Would my dad like them? I'm not sure, because for him as an artist, his babies, his artworks were, it was him. He put everything in them. But it's not for me to judge, whether something is good or bad. My eye is not, the rule.
Then for you, maybe personally, what do you think is a good watch design? Or is there anything such as a good watch design?
A good watch design is one that has a very singular artistic vision.
Okay.
So, and that balances, but this, I am really my father's daughter here, so this is just in my opinion, that it really balances a sense of, is it audacity or identity, or for my father, it was audacity with elegance. It was really this idea of being bold but being wearable. All his watches were so, let's say, it was just like so lovely to touch. It would fit under the sleeve. But it was bold. It wasn't your usual watch.
For sure.
I'm not saying that every watch needs to be bold, but it has to have a point of view. Otherwise, in my opinion, it doesn't deserve to exist.
So it's becoming a bit boring if there's
It's not a comment on the industry.
No,
just in
okay, no,
general.
no. I get it 100%. But a singular design, I think it's a very nice and elegant way to put it. When you look at a watch, it's sometimes. I mean, I try to. I'm in no sense a watch designer or a critic or anything, but sometimes some people, you know, like you see them judging the design or the look of a watch, starting from different parts. Like they like the hands, they talk about the case, they talk about the dial as if they are separate parts. But at the end of the day, it has to make sense altogether.
Of course.
Either you like it. I mean, maybe I should also not be allowed to say it as a watch retailer, but even if a watch has the most amazing, most complicated movement ever, at the end of the day, you have to put it on your wrist. Either you love what you're looking at, or if you don't, I mean, what's the purpose of having it on the wrist? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it has to make sense to a certain extent.
Collectors all are different. Perhaps some collectors really care so much more about
Of
the
course,
complication.
and I respect that. I get it.
But it's true that at the end of the day, I mean, let's face it, you know, I mean, watches, maybe none of us should say that, but at the end of the day, are watches really that functional and that useful?
They're unnecessary, to be honest.
They're useless, right? So
Yeah.
in reality, you're buying something that when you look at it on your wrist, it should make you happy.
Exactly, that's
and
my point.
It's art that you put on your wrist.
Yeah, I cannot agree more than this, but for example, like talking about inspirations and singular designs, when I first saw the new Ursen on the wrist, I was like quite amazed by it, you know, because it's an artistic product. It's more than a watch, in my opinion. It has an extremely strong, bold design. Some people might not like it, but nobody can deny that it's unlike anything else that you can find in this industry, which is also the genius of your fathers, no?
That's so true, and I'm so glad that the team at La Fabrique du Temps had, honestly, the vision and the courage.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a real, maybe not courage, but confidence
Sure.
to come out with this. Because, to be honest, people were expecting an entirely different. You know, it would be easy. Let's make an octagonal
Yeah, of
watch
course.
that Dad sold many of under his name, and that would be it. But the thing is that Dad, you know, was somebody that was unpredictable,
Yeah.
who he really took risks, and the team understood that. They spent so long talking to my mom and
Yeah.
myself. They have Michel and Enrico,
Yes.
who, you know, did a very long time of their career working with my father.
Yeah.
So they understand not just the models, but they understand the soul of the brand. And they know that Gérald Genta is a brand that takes risks. And by the way, the Gérald Genta watches, all of them, at least at the beginning, are polarizing. Think
Of
about
course.
the Royal Oak.
Of course.
Everybody hated the Royal Oak.
Exactly.
Now-
Nobody was buying that piece of steel for that amount of a
Absolutely.
price.
But the Oursin, every time somebody, especially that beautiful one that we can,
Maybe let's
that we can have a
pick
look
the tray up with us. We have a beautiful assortment of certain Genta pieces from the current collection, and the fire opal that you're mentioning right now is
I mean,
a mind-blowing, tiny little thing.
this watch I think, is extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's a watch that I see so much of my father in,
Yeah.
but Dad would not have been able to make it because
You don't think so?
when he did the Urchin, the Oursin,
Yeah.
it was all a mold. So the entire case, the technology was not there. The entire case was gold.
Ah, okay. Okay.
And I think that today, if he saw this, his mind would go running wild, because the fact that each bead here, the case is pierced, so each bead can be screwed in by hand, meaning that here you have a blank canvas, just like a painter.
Exactly.
And here, the fact that they pierced a fire opal like this, which is technically so complicated because it would explode, is sensational. And I think Dad would just be so proud of
And you know,
what we're doing.
I think, I mean, rightfully so, but he was really good with shapes, geometric designs, stuff like that. Not only on the case design, we see that in the entire Ursen collection. What is, I think, quite impressive is the faceted
Yeah.
glass. It's faceted from inside. Many people, like, you look at it from such an angle, you think that there is something going on the dial. And then when you realize that it's on the glass, you would assume it to be on top of the glass. But it's actually...
It's like you see it from far, you're like, whoa, what is this? And
Exactly.
then you get closer and you get hypnotized.
And you don't understand it, you have to like play with it, and it's quite a clever way to... Because sometimes if you play with too many shapes in a single watch, it might become a little bit tiring. You know what I mean?
True.
It might become a little bit too much.
This is balanced.
This is really balanced, really well balanced. Kudos to the team at Fabrique Vuitton for
It's
pulling such a beautiful
Mathieu
product.
Higgy, who is our creative director, and I really think that he's always carrying on Dad's legacy in such a tasteful and elegant way, but he is a creative man himself. I mean, he himself paints watches, you know, he has the same creative process. So that was, you can imagine, that was a relief to me when I met him.
Yeah.
The fact that he...
Of course,
you know,
because he'll be taking care of your father's legacy.
Exactly.
And by the way, for you, for him, and for the entire team at La Fabrique Vuitton, it must have been also a very extremely heavy responsibility, because the name that you're trying to represent, the legacy that you're trying to represent, is by far the most important designer of all times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the entire team did an amazing job.
I agree.
Also with the meteorite dials, like the one that I have on my wrist right now, it's beautiful, you know, it's somehow very well balanced with, I mean, on a titanium case with the beads, with the blue meteorite and the dial. It also plays, it's a very playful dial under the light. You look at it from different angles, every single time it's quite mesmerizing. But obviously, last but not least, we have the Geneva collection with us as well.
Yes.
What do you think about these?
So I think it's really interesting, especially when you put them on a tray next to the Oursin. It's Dad...
It's nowhere similar or unexpected,
you know,
really.
Dad was known as the Picasso of watchmaking.
Yep.
And it's not just because he was a painter, but it was actually mainly because he was so versatile.
Of course.
So just like Picasso has the Époque Bleue, Époque Rose, Cubism, etc. Dad, maybe we should start naming his epoch, you know, like his
Could
era.
be nice, by the way.
Yeah.
It would be really helpful for your, for the entire
maybe
watchmaking
I'll make
industry.
a note to myself. But and what you can see really, especially on his brand, is like in the 70s, he was more restrained. He had started and he was obsessed with finding the perfect equilibrium, the perfect harmony. Later on in the 80s, he becomes more daring. That's when you have the shapes like the golden gold and the Jessica and the Mickey on the dial. And in the 90s, this is the man who made it. He was driving a Ferrari in Monaco.
He can do whatever he likes.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody can say anything, you know?
And this is where this comes from. So I find it really lovely to see these collections next to each other, because they really represent his versatility.
Yep.
And the Geneva is that perfect balance. But what Mathieu did that was really genius and that I really love is that minute track. So it's a pillow-shaped case, but the fact that the minute track is a circle in the middle and then it sort of plays with your eyes and then expands into a pillow shape. Most people, they just get close to the watch and they're like, is it not? And it's a sort of optical illusion that that plays with you, you know?
I think that's something that your father, if he were alive, would love to
I think
reach.
he could have done that.
Yeah, you think so too?
I think so. This is where Mathieu's genius is there, is that he's not, you know, he's really doing Gérald Genta. He spent a lot of time with the archives and then he was able to design a new watch that has all of that design codes, the soft lines, the playfulness. You know, it's a bit of that traditional watch, but with that Italian, that was half Italian, with that Italian flair, you know?
Yeah.
And I definitely feel that with the maroon as
with
well.
With the maroon,
it's
dial. Beautiful. The dial, you have to put it on the wrist. May I ask you, before we sum this video up, are you allowed to share how many designs he had back in the days, or like overall?
We estimated over 100,000. Now, of course, it's not 100,000 models, but for sure, because if I think about it, Dad was able to design, he was designing at least 4 designs
a day.
Oof. And those were, I would say, in the 90s when he was more chilled.
Okay.
You know, and
so in the earlier days, he was designing with 10.
And he started young. If you think about his time at Universal and Hamilton and everything, you know, we're talking about the 50s. So it's a very, very long
Do you
career.
have the entire archive, or at least a fair amount of it?
There are a lot of designs that, back then archives was not
Yeah,
so
as is today.
of his brands.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that now that La Fabrique du Temps has all designed and we spend so much time looking at the designs. But for sure, there are times, you think about the King Midas. I would love to see that design one day, but that design is, I don't know, maybe it'll turn up one day.
Maybe, exactly. That's what I was gonna say.
That's a shout out. Anyone, anyone could find that design, please.
Could be an amazing thing to.
But so
find
yes, because back
someday.
then archives was just not such a big thing, and for me on my side, it's been a huge work to rebuild these archives and tell the story of my father, to always inform the Gérald Genta team, like all of us.
Yeah.
So that we always know that we're going in the right direction.
But I think you are doing an amazing job
Thank you
with
so
that.
much.
The entire team is doing an amazing job, looking after your father's heritage, building something on top of it. So thanks a lot for taking your time, being with us here in Istanbul, taking the time for the video, and I hope to see you soon
Oh,
again
definitely.
in Istanbul.
If you bring me to places like this, you'll
With pleasure.
see me more
With
often.
pleasure. Thanks a lot, and hope to see you soon, Alexia.
Thank you so much.
Bye.